Hi, I'm Marcus. I'll be sharing with you guys my senior capstone project. So it's a longboard business proposition. So I'll be looking at longboards and sharing with you my design principles and the story behind it, and showing you what I came up with. So I'm Marcus. I do industrial design. I also ride longboards. Funny story. Let me begin with a story here. My first interactions with longboards were at Cedarville's campus, actually. And, I saw people riding longboards around and I was like, I want to try this. So I borrowed one of my roommate's longboards, got absolutely hooked on it. It was very cool and a lot of fun. So I thought, I need to make my own because they're quite expensive. So at the time I had a class that had access to a wood shop, and I actually went into the wood shop before I had even met the professor, cut out a longboard, and the professor walked in and asked, what are you doing? And I'm Marcus, I'm in your class, I'm making a longboard. So anyways, a little bit of history. I've made a couple longboards since then. And this time I'm going to be actually sharing with you, some different designs, the history, the problems with longboards right now, some of my design solutions, and my business plan that goes along with it. So the history of longboards. Longboards actually became a alternative to surfing when the waves weren't as big or big enough to ride. People thought, let's go surf on the land, on roads, on sidewalks, rather than on the ocean, because we can't right now. So it kind of stemmed off from skateboarding. So skateboards are kind of built to be rugged. You can do tricks with them, throw them on the ground, they won't break. They're a little more stout, but they're not as fast and stable at high speeds. Longboards are kind of built, to take turns real fast, go down hills, just cruise. They're pretty versatile, but that's what makes them separated. So as of now, not much has changed. On the left, you'll see an early longboard. This is from 80s or 70s, and you see a longboard from today. Very similar things. They still have a deck, which is the wood part. They still have trucks, which is the wheel mechanism that attaches the wheels to the board. This is the problem. Not that much has changed. Things have kind of stagnated. I did a little research on Google and kind of figured out the interest behind longboards. And you can see in the red, you have longboards kind of at the beginning of 2009, very popular. Skateboards, very popular. Longboards are, kind of relatively unknown. Then you'll notice in 2014, things kind of spike, and that's the actual, the trends towards using battery-powered electric motors on longboards, and also skateboards. But since then, interest has waned a little bit, and that's kind of what I'm interested in. I want to, revitalize the market, or figure out how to do that. So what I've come up with is the market has kind of stagnated due to repetitive designs. There are many different board shapes. However, they're all built relatively the same. Plywood, and that's about it. Very rarely do you come across a longboard that is actually built out of a different sort of material that is actually radically different. So how am I going to remedy this? So I want to create some new board designs, just things that have not been tried before, and see if they work. And I want to provide all this at a very affordable price point. So introduce things that are going to kind of save money, but not actually reduce the quality. Here's my design objectives for this project. I want to design radically different longboards. I want the shapes to be just wild. I want something to be completely different. I want to reduce cost without reducing the actual quality of the board. I want to build a strong brand language to brand all these boards with, and also provide several different options and styles. So in order to captivate different parts of the market. So for this, I wanted to come up with a logo or a marquee or something to kind of put on all the boards and establish this brand language. And the criteria I gave myself was, I want to indicate momentum, adaptability, and be easily recognizable. So I kind of started out with a bow because that has a bunch of potential momentum in it. I kind of formed it, as you can see on the ideation to the left, into this kind of arrowhead A logo thing. And I decided on the name Apollo because it begins with A, first letter of the alphabet, and it kind of sounds cool. So that's the brand. It'll be Apollo Longboards. So another thing I want to take into account is 3D printing. I have a big background in it, and I want to be able to take my ideas, put it into reality while playing to the strengths of this new technology. Basically being able to do things that wouldn't technically be possible if you were to use different methods. So you'll see this throughout the project. So here's kind of an overview of the longboards. On the left, you have the traditional longboard. We're going to do one traditional longboard, and then on the right, you'll see a very unconventional longboard. And then there is something in between. So I want to have kind of a halfway point in between those two. So we're going to start with the classic board. So this is kind of like the simplest board, most traditional. So I kind of just started ideating different shapes, all sorts of different ones. These are the highlights. The one on the right is actually the board I will be going with. I wanted something that'll be kind of a hybrid between a downhill board. So a downhill board would be like the very first one on the ideation, and a carving board, which would be one with the, you'll see in the ideation, the ones with the biggest wheel cutouts. So I wanted a kind of a hybrid between that because I wanted it to be the most versatile. So this is the classic board that I came up with. It's render. You'll see the logo in the middle, lots of grip tape. So that's the sandpaper, like black stuff on the top that keeps your feet from sliding off the board. This board, since it's a traditional style board, I'll be using plywood for this one. It's the most traditional material. Most longboards are built out of that. In fact, almost all of them. And it's very strong, easily manufacturable, and it's cheap. However, there's a distinct change that I'll be applying. I'll be building this board to be CNC'd out, so basically be able to be cut out very easily, and not providing a dished surface at the top, which would require the plywood to be actually formed and put into a press for a certain amount of time. And that's just that's a cost-saving measure. You don't actually need it to be dished. It is a rider's preference, but for this one, I won't be providing it. So on the underside, I wanted to keep it kind of really clean, just with the marquee or logo in the very center. You can do whatever you like with the board, but it'll be just a blank slate. So before I move on to the next boards, let's talk about hardware a little bit. You'll see me talk about certain things throughout this presentation. Let's just clear some of that up. So this is the wheel assembly. So this is basically what makes your board work. Connects the wheels to the board. This is known as a truck in the industry. The truck also provides the ability to turn. So as you lean, it changes the angle. Basically, the truck actually, so the angle at which the truck is placed at actually determines the speed and stability of the board. So a narrower truck, so with like a 40 degree would be very good at high speed, 60 degree would be crazy for turning. So I went with a middle ground thing because this board is supposed to be very versatile. Another thing I want to talk about is flexibility. Every board will flex just a little bit. This is just a preference of the person who's riding. So keeping this in mind, I wanted to kind of provide, different levels of flexibility. So the top being very flexible, and the bottom being extremely rigid. And basically, the thickness of the board will determine how it feels. Let's talk about the wheels a little bit. The wheels are an opportunity basically to put your branding out there in a different form. Rather than just pasting it on the board, you can have your branding all over the wheels as well. Took this opportunity to put some material composition and like different attributes like the wheel width, wheel diameter. Again, very middle ground approach to the wheels. Not huge, not tiny. I'll have some colors. Make your board your own. Basically, just make your stuff stand out. So let's move on to the core board. So this is the kind of the middle of the road, applying 3D printed parts to the board, but also keeping some of that traditional board aspect as well. So this is very much a hybrid. So you'll see the end caps are actually placed on the board. I'll show that on a later slide, but also the trucks, the wheel assemblies will be attached to the bottom of these printed parts. So you'll attach, actually, hold on, go through the ideation. Basically, this is another step away from that traditional board. This is much more of a cruising board than any sort of downhill or middle ground board. Basically, these trucks will actually sit on the top. So these are the opposite of a drop-through truck, which will be sitting through the board. They'll be sitting on the underside. And I thought, let's take something a little further. Let's paste the logo as big as we can on one side of the board and see how that looks. You'll see the grip tape is a little different as well. This is to accommodate the different role that this board will play. You don't need a bunch of grip tape on a cruising board, but this is again down to the rider. This is showing how the end caps actually come off. So these black parts will be printed, and they are strong enough. I have tested it. And again, this board is easily CNCable, again, reducing costs and making it more financially viable. And this is how everything would attach. You would actually attach the truck first and then slide the end cap onto the board. There would be tolerances and actual things printed into the plastic parts that would keep this part from falling off the board. So it's not going to just, leave the board when you're kicking or fall off in a corner. It's actually incredibly solid and won't come off. So let's move on to the most radical design. This is the split board. So basically, the whole idea behind this is to add a dished feel to the board. So in technical terms, this is called dihedral, and it's just the amount of concavity that the board has, and this makes it better for carving, more athletic tasks. So this one was by far the most difficult board to figure out because I needed something that would be strong when it is printed and also play to the strengths of both materials, both the wood and both the actual printed parts. So there were a lot of designs that actually would not work, and I kind of had to go the middle ground and figure out exactly what would provide the strongest thing, because you are essentially sawing your board down the middle and then reattaching it in order to give it this appearance. Something I wanted to add with this board is using a solid wood, something that is almost unheard of in longboards. So you could use a basically solid wood and not a plywood. This is basically for a more premium feel and look, as plywoods tend to be a little cheaper. So this one I actually built. It rides. It's actually a lot of fun. It looks absolutely crazy when you can see the ground through the board, and it's a lot of fun to ride. One thing I would change in my testing is probably these little cutouts, as seen by in this slide. You can see it's actually a pocket where the wheel goes. A little hard to see. It's right to the top right of the wheel. So you'll notice that this thing has spines down the middle. This is for strength. It basically keeps the board from, breaking. But as I was designing, I thought, why don't we take this one step further? Why don't we, take these spines out? What if we wanted to electrify it and put, some motors on it? You could take these spines out and you could actually figure out how to put a battery on it. So, I took them off. Let's put a battery pack on it. Let's put some motors on it. This is basically taking the big step from human power to electric power. So a little different design. Basically, went with the 2-motor design. It's basically a kind of just a package that you can buy separately from the board. So there's a couple different reasons this is important. Number one is you're able to, have a repeat customer. So, someone buys a board and then they, want to electrify it later on. And they just, can buy this package and then do it themselves. Or you can buy it complete as a package, and then you'll be getting into the electric longboard market. So you're kind of dipping your feet into both markets at the same time with this, which is a very important thing to do. It's just a breakdown. I wanted to go with a dual motor approach because, it's faster that way, and I value speed. It's a lot of fun to go fast on longboards. Obviously, you wouldn't put it together this way. This is just a breakdown. It would come with separate wheels that make this possible. So basically, in order to do this, you would take the center supports out and put the battery pack in. One thing I thought is, let's not have a separate controller for your board. Let's not have a like a thing you hold instead of something else where you have to charge the remote. So we all carry a phone with us. Why not have a Bluetooth receiver, and you have an app on your phone where you can control the speed? So basically, this is breaking down the board and how you would take apart your own board and put the new parts in. I thought, why not add something a little more, because grip tape is cheap. Let's throw some different grip tape in there so you can have a very different look. So you'd peel the original grip tape off, you'd take the board apart, you'd put these new centerpieces in, put the board back together. It's pretty simple. So let's talk about the business plan a little bit. So basically, I would want a website where I'd be able to sell all of these products and provide this. Perhaps in the future, maybe I could have this product on Amazon, something like that. Also through Instagram, since that's a kind of a rising market. Basically, I want a platform upon which to expand and build the brand. So let's break down the cost just a little bit. The cost for the wood would be around $40. Wheels and hardware, 40 as well. Plastics very cheap as they would be made in-house. Wheels and hardware and wood would be sourced other places, as well as the grip tape. Grip tape is cheap as well. Human interaction is another thing I wanted to touch on because that's actually a very interesting thing. Let me break that down a little bit. So typical longboards, you have to laminate a deck. You would have to form it by putting it in a press and sand the deck afterwards. This is a very time-consuming process, or if you're going to automate this is very expensive to set up. And so normally they're not automated. And then you would have to assemble the board and ship it. So with Apollo boards, basically what I would do is have the deck cutting automated, have the printed parts automated as well. All the human interaction you would have to do is assemble the board and ship it. So that is the big cost saving measure. And also I wanted to take the liberty to do some other products. So this is just a sample of what else I could sell in addition. Just to reinforce the brand lifestyle. So basically you're buying a board that looks wild, looks crazy. And I thought, why don't you make it possible to display something like that? Let's make these little wall mounting pieces, basically foam rubber things with a plastic insert with a screw, and you would screw this into your wall. You could take your board, set it on there, and mount it. Basically, super simple. Comes with an Allen key, and you slide the board down and lock it in place. So it's very simple, but it's just a hint of what could come afterwards, and kind of extend the brand language and move into some other things as well. So how did I solve this problem? Basically, took a radical new design, went through with it, prototyped it, tested it, and it worked. Made a different brand, made some brand appeal, optimized the costs as much as I could to make it possible to make the longboard as cheap as possible. And the typical longboards run from 200 to 250, depending on the quality. And I'd be able to sell the board and make a profit at 175 to 150. And I also wanted, several options in there, so people would have the choice between many different things. So I leave you with go out and get lost with Apollo boards, but not in the crowd. And thank you. If you have any questions, text Gabe at the number below. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. First question, how much does your board weigh compared to others on the market?
It's actually very similar. So the ability to use hardwoods means you can actually use thinner wood. And plastic is, it has a hollow crystalline structure almost. Not crystalline, but there's a certain infill that I use that is extremely light. So the board actually ends up being extremely similar to my other longboards.
What drove this product? Was it the aesthetic, the manufacturing, or the functionality?
All of it. I'm very interested in the manufacturing. I loved, figuring out how to make this actually work, get a part to print. I love the idea of actually being able to ride the board. I really do enjoy longboarding. It's very similar to surfing, especially because we're landlocked here in Ohio and Arkansas. And I did like the aesthetic. It kind of grew on me at the end.
Recent grad Priscilla says very strong presentation and branding. Then she asks, any plans for next steps to create this after graduation?
It actually is already in the making. I've already gotten in touch with people who can cut these boards out. So I'll be getting a batch soon and basically building a couple of these for my friends and family here that want some. And then I'm going to do some other user testing, basically making sure this would actually work in a market. And maybe tweaking some of the things like the center supports, making it more optimized to actually use in the real world, rather than just be something that just looks crazy, and also reliability. So yeah, there's definitely a plan to actually make this a viable business.
Another recent grad, Hannah, says, great job. So impressed by your knowledge of the manufacturing process and above and beyond polished finish. Then she asks if you have any video of you using the board.
I don't. It's been raining here constantly. So I didn't get out to go ride the longboard and, take some videos. I did ride it though, but I didn't think to take some videos because I was like, well, I'll ride it for a bit and then take a video or something like that. So
yeah,
I don't, but there will be one day.
So for aerodynamics, it makes sense that the board needs to be symmetrical along its spine, so vertically. Is there a reason that it also needs to be symmetrical horizontally? For instance, could the back have a different profile than the front?
You absolutely could. I'm not a fan of that, which is why I didn't make an appearance here, but I could absolutely do a variant that is that way. It's all down to what the market wants.
So you have simplified and automated a lot of these processes, are you concerned about anyone buying this board, remodeling your plastic parts, and then undercutting that portion of your process? Or are you confident that that's not a big enough deal for people to manufacture? What's your concern there?
So the way this would work is I would be first to the market, which means I would make money in the first place. Also, if someone starts undercutting, this could absolutely just go to me undercutting them, since it's all automated. And since I would be making money in the first place, the machines would already be paid off. Hopefully. And so it is a concern a little bit, but I don't think it's enough of a concern. And it's definitely a difficult thing to actually make this stuff work. This took quite a few prototypes. So it's not impossible, but you have to have access to the right machines, right knowledge. And hopefully the branding will also be kind of like a firewall for that as well.
Is it possible to purchase just a deck, or do you have to purchase the entire package? That being said, could someone have an existing set of trucks and just order a deck, or are they proprietary?
No,
okay.
the trucks work with any, or the decks work with any truck. So I made sure of that. So yeah, you could absolutely, have a board, the board breaks, and then buy this one instead and just swap the parts over.
Excellent. Someone says, beautiful work. Are there significant functional or usability advantages of your design over the traditional design? So
that's one thing I wanted to not have is, a very different board feel. So I kind of prototyped this and modeled it to act like a normal board, because normal boards are, predictable. They don't, change shape if you lean on them really hard. So this board is actually quite similar to how a normal board would feel.
Okay. And for those of us interested, when and how could we find out when we might be able to purchase and or test these?
So there'll be a Instagram page, and that's probably how I'll do that. If you want, you can email me, contact me, and I'll do my best to give you a time of when this would actually work. Hopefully in the next couple months, something like that.
Okay. And I think I can speak on behalf of the ICC when I say if you pass it along to the ICC and want to make it public, then we can share that on your behalf.
Okay.
So long as you all are following us, we can get you connected with Marcus. All right. I think that just about does it for the questions. Marcus, fantastic job. Thank you so much, everyone. If you would join me in congratulating him on a job well done.